So, because I got so many comments on my The Truth About Graphics Settings video, asking me to do a video about display and audio settings, today I'm going to do a video about display settings, and go over a few common misconceptions and a few things that you just may not have known about the display settings of Siege. And just so you know, today's video is sponsored by temporal filtering. Head on over to teespring.com/NJOverclock to pick up some temporal filtering merch. We got cheap tees, we got fancy tees, we got hoodies, we got blue and black. So whatever your style is, you can help support the channel while also paying respect. Can we get a moment of silence, please? So with that out of the way, let's start at the top. Resolution, in this case the display resolution, only dictates how many pixels your monitor will show. Before this new update, it also dictated how many pixels your GPU would render, but since they've now separated the display and render resolutions, you should pretty much just always leave this on auto or the display resolution of your monitor. So if you're looking to change your resolution for an FPS boost, do it under the graphics menu instead. Display mode is pretty self-explanatory. You should pretty much always play in full screen unless you have a specific reason to play it in windowed, like if you need to quickly switch to another application or third-party software. And then we have the daddy of display settings, which is refresh rate. And this is where I want to clear up some misconceptions. First of all, 120 Hz is a hoax. The human eye can't see more than 30 frames per second, and anyone who tells you otherwise probably works for the Illuminati. Also, Capitao can't melt steel beams, and Tachanka did 9/11. No, but seriously, a higher refresh rate is always better, and a higher frame rate is always better. And I mean that regardless of the refresh rate of your monitor. Let me explain. If you have a 60 Hz monitor, your monitor's outputting 60 images per second, evenly distributed from each other. In other words, it's not going to show you 50 frames in half a second, and then the other 10 frames in half a second. That would just look stuttery and weird. But because of the way GPUs render games, and because different rendered frames will have different levels of detail, typically your GPU is not rendering those frames at exactly the same pace your monitor is displaying them. That pretty much never happens. Not even if your frame rate is locked or if you're using VSync. Because what VSync does is it forces a frame every 60th of a second by delaying when frames are shown. And this is why VSync causes input lag. We'll get to that more in the VSync section. What instead happens is that your monitor pulls the most recent frame that your GPU has rendered. So what this means in practice is that 70 FPS is still better than 60 FPS, even if your monitor is only a 60 Hz monitor. Because if there are more frames, then every 60th of a second, your monitor will have a more recent frame to pull from. Does that mean you're going to see a difference between 70 FPS and 60 FPS on a 60 Hz monitor? Probably not. That's just an extreme example, but the higher your frame rate goes, the smoother the game will feel. I saw that argument happening a lot in the comment section, so I wanted to clear it up. So if you were wondering why professional players use really low settings, that's probably why. And that's also why so many people value temporal filtering so much. Merch link in bio. And by the way, on the other side of the same coin, having a 120 Hz monitor is always better than having a 60 Hz monitor, even if you're not getting 120 FPS. This being because a faster monitor makes screen tearing less apparent and also reduces input lag. And I'm almost certain there's going to be some people in the comments angrily disagreeing with me, but they're wrong. By the way, some bonus information on the topic of monitors and refresh rates. I've seen some people saying that response time is how fast it is for a monitor to receive an image from a GPU, but that doesn't really make sense. The response time of your monitor is just how long it takes for the pixels to change from one color to another. So it's literally how fast the monitor responds to change. And that's also the reason why the vast majority of gaming monitors use TN panels, because TN panels, despite having limited viewing angles, have much faster response times than IPS and VA LCD screens. Moving on. Aspect ratio is simply the ratio of your rendered image, width to height. Setting this to auto will simply default to the aspect ratio of your monitor, which is probably 16:9, but you may have noticed that some pros play on weird aspect ratios like 4:3, like Cameraman for example. And the benefit of using a simpler aspect ratio like this is that it will be more stretched out, making enemies look bigger and their heads easier to aim at. So why doesn't everyone do this then? Well, because it has drawbacks too. For example, enemies also appear to move faster across the screen. Also, if you play at an aspect ratio other than the one that you're used to, your mouse sensitivity will feel different as well. But I must say, Siege has a great number of options when it comes to aspect ratio and looks really great on widescreen monitors. Now let's get to VSync, which is really complicated and pretty simple at the same time. VSync, which is short for vertical sync, is a technology that allows you to eliminate screen tearing, which is basically just part of a new frame being shown alongside part of an old frame, as a result of your GPU not syncing perfectly with your monitor. The reason I say it's simple is because if you have screen tearing, you should turn VSync on. If you don't, you should leave it off. But at the same time, it's not that simple. For example, if you have a 60Hz monitor and you're getting consistently below 60 FPS, VSync is going to cause really bad input lag problems and stutter problems. So basically, if you're experiencing screen tearing and you have really bad FPS, VSync is not going to help you. You just pretty much have to upgrade your hardware. But if you're experiencing screen tearing and you're exceeding the FPS of your monitor's refresh rate, then VSync will help you, but it will still cause some input lag. There's simply no avoiding that. VSync will always cause input lag. It's just a matter of how much, and that just depends on the power and capacity of your hardware. Also, Rainbow Six Siege and most Ubisoft games give you multiple VSync options, 1 frame or 2 frames. 1 frame will sync it at your monitor's refresh rate, and 2 frames will just sync every other frame, syncing at half your monitor's refresh rate. Honestly, I can't really tell why anybody would want to use 2 frame, but the option is there. Now, in case you want to understand VSync a little bit more and why screen tearing occurs, you need to know what buffers are and basically how frames are rendered. Frames are not simply rendered straight from your GPU to your monitor. They're rendered from top to bottom and then into buffers in your GPU. There are 2 buffers and each one basically holds the frame until it's ready to be sent to the monitor. But sometimes the next frame will have more detail and thus take longer to render. However, because your monitor has a demand for a certain number of frames every second, that image will be pushed out too soon before it's finished, leaving that unfinished frame to just sit on top of the previous frame. And because frames are rendered from top to bottom, well, this is what it looks like. Some games will have other options as well, for example, triple buffering, which adds a 3rd buffer and increases the efficiency of the buffer system, but I don't want to get too deep into it, so I'll leave it at that, and I'll link some other videos on the topic in the description. Keep in mind my descriptions are as basic as I can make them, and don't fully do justice to what's happening behind the scenes. Also, it's worth mentioning that Rainbow Six Siege is a game that's optimized in a weird way, such that for a lot of people, VSync seems to take some strain off of their CPU usage. So if you have a good GPU and a lot of frames, but you're having some CPU usage issues, you might want to try turning on VSync to see if it helps. The rest of the display options are pretty simple. Widescreen letterbox is for people who want to play widescreen but don't want to have their image squished or stretched, and it fixes that by adding black bars to the top and bottom of the screen. And FOV, or field of view, just determines how many degrees of vision you'll have, or how much of the world you'll be able to see. In real life, you have a 180-degree field of view because you can see everything in front of you and everything to your left and right in your periphery. What this means is that in general, higher degree field of views in game are going to feel more natural, although it does depend on how far away you are from your monitor. However, at the same time, the higher your field of view is, the harder it is to see things far away, and vice versa. Personally, I tend to bounce between 80 and 90 FOV, depending on what map I'm playing or what site I'm using. For example, if I'm running with an ACOG, usually I'll turn my FOV up to 90. That way the ACOG site itself doesn't block too much of the screen, and it's easier to see things on either side of the site. And that about covers it. Hopefully this video was helpful to you in some way or another. If you have any questions, leave me a comment, subscribe to the channel if you want more content, and check out teespring.com/njoverclocked if you want to rep temporal filtering. Wear it to the Invitational, see what the devs think. Also, if you like skateboarding at all, check out Spencer Barton. He puts way too much effort into his content and is way too good at skateboarding to have as little subscribers as he does, aka less subscribers than me. Even if you're not into skateboarding, his videos are really funny and well edited. I've been watching him for a while now and I wanted to show some love. He didn't ask for a shout out or anything, I just really like his channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.